came out when we were doing our nonfiction unit with the picture books, and I asked the questions. I asked a reading. They're still at the point where I'm guiding them quite a bit in their reading journals. And I asked the question, I said, how do you read nonfiction? And so these are two different student samples. And in the first one, she says, well, I read it like every other book. I read it word for word. Kind of like, what are you talking about, I guess? And I realized that they didn't understand what I was asking. There was no framework there for how you read something. They said it was the physical act. It was what they were doing, not what they were thinking. And I saw some where that we were getting there. So this student, this is a very competent reader, the student who wrote, I read every word. And this is a very reluctant reader. And he said, well, I look at the sidebars, I make a prediction, and I keep going, and then I see if my prediction was right. So oddly enough, in my reluctant reader, here is some, he's doing a lot of thinking about how he reads, perhaps because he's less engaged with the text directly, who knows. So I looked at these and I said, okay, we have to have a talk about metacognition. So this is a picture. We made an anchor chart, which I do have the physical copy. We made an anchor chart and we introduced the word metacognition, and we were able to use what we know of cog and cognition to kind of come up with an idea, thinking about thinking. Meta was new to them. And so we made a list of things that we think about and why we think about that, and things that we do when we're reading. And then I had them do a second entry, and we'd done one of this before we did reading is. Reading is exciting, reading is, all the fun things that reading is. And I said, okay, we're going to do this again, but we're going to talk about what we do when we read. So you can see the same student who wrote, well, I read the words on the page, said reading is more than just looking at words on a page. She said reading is thinking about the story, it's visualizing, it's informational, it's noticing text features. I mean, she just went right down the line making a list of all the things she does when she's reading. And from then on out in my reading conferences, I was able to ask, and the students were able to use these words, not always, of course, but Tyler I was talking to said, well, I have a hard time visualizing that because I've never seen anybody do it. So he could identify what was difficult for him and what we could work on, which is really helpful. There's a lot of students I'm working on visualization strategies with them. So it's been really helpful to have, once we've built that framework and keep referring back to it, that I can, again, keep using those words in my conferences with them.